I've actually been so bad at doing this podcast thing. It's been 3 months since I've been in this studio, but I'm so excited to share that we are back. This is The Next Stop Is with me, Jane August, where I talk to people in New York City that I think are cool. And something that I haven't really talked about on here is my college experience. I'm really proud to be a CUNY alum. That's the City University of New York, where I attended Brooklyn College. There I got a BFA in technical theater and was very active in our theater department. And if you've looked at the list of theater maker alums from Brooklyn College, you may recognize some of the greatest playwrights of modern time because they have a remarkable playwriting program, which is how I met today's guest. I am very excited to welcome my former classmate, Cherry Lu Tsai, who is a brilliant author and playwright. We met in a producing class at Brooklyn College where she got her MFA in playwriting, and I had the privilege of associate producing one of her plays about 5 years ago now. Cherry also has a BA from the Gallatin School of Individualized Study at NYU. She's an adjunct lecturer at Brooklyn College as well as a teacher with PEN America's Dreaming Out Loud. And recently, Cherry released her debut novel, Love Can't Feed You, which is a gorgeous book about intergenerational fractures and coming of age. As soon as I finished it, I was like, Cherry needs to come on the podcast to talk about it. So welcome.
Oh, Jane, I am so just ecstatic that you asked me to be on your podcast.
So I guess to start, can you give a bit of a rundown about your book, Love Can't Feed You?
Love Can't Feed You, my debut novel, features a family who is originally from the Philippines, and they're coming to the United States as immigrants. They're here to join the mother who's been working as a nurse for the last few years, and then the family, from the point of view of the firstborn daughter, Queenie, who is 17 years old at that time, basically talks about the immigration experience and how in trying to assimilate, it's actually not what they thought it would be. And instead of an American dream, it kind of becomes this American nightmare.
How did the book come to you?
Yeah, have you ever heard of this book by this French author, Marguerite Duras? It's called The Lover.
I don't think I have.
Marguerite Duras, and this is my roundabout way of introducing how I got to work on my book. But Marguerite Duras, she's fascinating because French white woman who was in French Indochina, born and raised. And her life is super interesting because her father, I don't remember now if he had died or if he ran away. So it was just her mom and then her siblings and her. And then they were so poor that she ended up kind of prostituting herself to this older Chinese man. And I had never read anything like it. It's kind of like a memoir, but the way how that book was, it's like considered either autofiction or memoir, something like that. Mm-hmm. And I read it and I was just like fascinated because I was thinking I had never read anything where an ethnic Chinese man was the romantic lead. And that was big for me. And then I was super interested at their age gap, and the fact that he was Chinese and she was an other, like someone different. So I kept thinking, wait, this is kind of like my mom and my dad who have this age gap, and he's Chinese and she's not, and she's from the Philippines, whatever. I mean, she's not white like Marguerite Duras. But then I kept thinking about that, and I thought, what if they had a love child? What if, and it just started to sort of spiral, into that. And then, although my mom was not a prostitute or did not prostitute herself as far as I know. So that's where it really started, because then the story, I just kept thinking about it. First, it was just, little scribbles here and there about them having a love child, but sort of superimposing my family dynamic. And then that's really when it started. And then it just kept going.
Did you always envision that this would be a novel, or did it start as a different kind of project?
I think it was always prose, so I didn't know what it was going to be. Mm-hmm. I thought it might be a short story. I mean, I'm not great at writing short stories. I only have one short story officially published at the Massachusetts Review. it just kept getting longer and longer. So until it became a novel.
Did you always plan on being a novelist? Because I know when we first met, you were like a playwright, or at least that's how you identify was playwright.
Yes.
Was that always something in your mind?
I was always writing, but I think everybody starts out as a poet. You know, I just remember being a teenager, being depressed all the time, and just being like, I'm going to write poetry. You know, and so I remember having a huge white binder with poems that I've written. You know, and that was like my heart and soul. So I thought I would be a poet, but that I suck at poetry too, I think. So then I tried to act. I mean, I guess I was always trying to write something, but then it solidified more with playwriting because it seemed to work. Like, oh, I got into an MFA program, you know, one of the premier playwriting programs where, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of famous alums have gone through, you know. So yeah, I did not expect that it wouldn't be a production first, but a debut novel.
This book, I think, in some way is poetry. Like, the prose is so beautiful.
Thank you.
Like, me and Kevin were texting. He's like, did you start the book? I'm like, yeah. He's like, the prose is incredible. I'm like, I know. I can't remember the last time I read something like this. Has that, like, always been in you? Were there other authors that kind of inspired you to write this way? How'd you get there?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you're a writer, you do have to be an omnivorous reader. So I guess I was reading all sorts of people, poets also. I was reading like Natalie Diaz, Ocean Vuong, of course, and et cetera, et cetera. I have a friend, Monica Suk, who is a Cambodian American poet, you know. So there's just, I guess, infusion of poetry. And then you know this, in playwriting, we have a lot of poets, too, who became playwrights or who are poet playwrights, and a lot of the language can be super poetic as well, and then and lyrical. If you look at some of the greats, like Ntozake Shange, you know, she's a poet first, actually. And yeah, so I feel like all of that anyway stems from the same fountainhead, you know.
At what point of the writing did you realize this is a novel?
I think when I couldn't stop writing.
Okay.
You know? Wait, when did we take the class with, oh my gosh, with Daniela Topol? When did we take that class?
Fall of 2018.
Okay, fall of 2018. Ooh, I think I had an inkling of something that I was working on, but I didn't know what it was going to be. I think by the time I graduated when did you graduate from your BFA?
I got my BFA December 2019. Like, I lucked out because they made me graduate early.
I also graduated around that time. I was super depressed. I was thinking, you know, what is theater and why am I a playwright? Anyway, I ended up signing up for a novel generator class because I thought, let me take a break from playwriting because it seems like theater does not love me right now. So let me look somewhere else. And anyway, when I was talking, I had a conversation with Mac Wellman, and he did encourage me to not just stick with playwriting. He said, you want to write a novel? Go write a novel. So I said, okay.
How did the book evolve from the first draft to the final? Has the story always kind of stayed the same?
There was a thematic spine to it, you know, like I wanted to examine what love and transaction was. I wanted to examine what it meant to be, or what it means to be becoming a person, especially if you're a woman, you know. So I think those were the fundamental building blocks, and then there was armor of stories, sort of one interlaced on the other.
You were born in the Philippines, right?
Yes.
When did you immigrate over?
Oh, yes. I'm glad you asked me because I have to underscore this part. This is not a memoir. Funny story, although I did not find it funny last week when it happened. One of my friends kept insisting that it must be real, that it was some memoir. And I kept saying, no, it's not. So she was asking me about, well, why should I invest my time if it's not real? Because it might not be authentic. And yeah, exactly. I rolled my eyes too. I was so mad. But anyway, So unlike the protagonist who came at 17 and about to go to college, I actually came here when I was 13 and in high school. So a very, very awkward high school experience. I used to confuse things like lock and locker. I remember I was at the SO store in the basement and I was asking for a locker, and then this I guess she was one of the students who worked there. She looked at me funny and she's like, "You mean a lock?" so things, just little things like that.
Because I know your story and Queenie's, they're a bit similar in
Yeah,
that way.
they overlap, of course.
It's inspired, but not memoir.
Yes, yes.
But having mixed Chinese and Filipino heritage and being immigrant yourself, do you think you struggled with finding identity and community in a way that Queenie does in the novel?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The reason for that is because when I was in the Philippines, I was considered an other already. So it's not like here where you're like, okay, you're white and then you're an other of whatever ethnicity, you know. In the Philippines, even though I'm Asian and, you know, allegedly we're all Asian there, I was considered an other because of my Chinese heritage. So I remember incidents where, yeah, like I remember myself being bullied, my sister being bullied, my certain Chinese people I knew being bullied. There were ethnic Chinese who were also being kidnapped. That was very, very popular because the stereotype is that if you're Chinese, you have to be rich and that they are averse to risk, and so they'll just pay off the ransom. Anyway, 5th grade, I had one classmate, I remember his name Gary. Okay, Gary, I don't know where you are, but you have impacted me so much. So this kid, Gary, very, very patriotic, right? So he had many brothers. So he told me one of his brothers had discussed with him the state of the Philippines and that our people, the Chinese people, have come in there, invaded the country economically, and we have stolen from them. And, you know, he's putting it on me like I'm the representative of...
You did it.
Yeah, I did it, right? I was the tip of the iceberg. And so I said, I actually did not know how to respond to that, but it made an impact on me. And I remember asking my dad about that, but he said, oh, what can you do? It's like, that's just how it is. So for the longest time when I was there, even though I'm half Chinese, I thought, oh, so I'm just Chinese, right? Okay, then I come to the United States. Guess what? Suddenly, I'm not Chinese. I met Chinese kids from my high school who basically said to me that, well, you don't really look Chinese, because they have a specific way, I guess, of how they see Chinese. Although, I mean, China itself has like, I think 86 different ethnicities, and they all look very different. But anyway, the ones I grew up with in South Brooklyn, New York, that time, had said things like, well, you don't speak Chinese, you don't really act Chinese, you don't really look Chinese, so you're not Chinese. So I started to have like this identity crisis because I always thought I was one thing, and then suddenly in this different environment, I am not. So there was just this cultural identity crisis, and then people kept saying, "Oh, but you're Filipino," and then I thought, well, when I grew up, people didn't think I was, and then now I am, and then there was just so much shame around who I thought I was, who people like implied I would be, and yeah, I think I had mentioned this at the book launch where one of my fears growing up was becoming a maid, like that it was exported basically or outside, like in Hong Kong or like Saudi Arabia or something like that. Because that was the stereotype, that if you were Filipino from a certain class, you would end up working abroad, usually as a domestic help. It was rough. I remember just having that very tumultuous time trying to think about, where do I belong in this American pie?
You really incorporated that into the book.
Yeah, I did.
Do you think writing a story that's like somewhat similar with those motions? Was it like emotionally taxing to write the book?
Oh yeah, I think I cried a lot many times because it is therapeutic. I mean, I don't know what other people say about it because they talk about writing as craft, but so yes, writing is craft. I guess that's similar to acting, where actors have specific experiences, right? And it doesn't mean that, so they go there, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean they stay there. That's where the craft comes in, where you pull back and just use the emotion and do the thing that you're supposed to do, and your job is to still be okay, you know. So it's similar to that. I think that's the best way I could describe it.
Yeah, we always talk about like actors being so emotional, but
Yeah,
forget that
yeah.
so are writers.
I know.
It has to come from somewhere. When I was reading the book, I felt like there was kind of like a sense of sorrow throughout the novel.
Mm.
Was that intentional, or did that come through as the story evolved?
I think as the story evolved, because originally it was more sarcastic, I would say, and angry. I was an angry writer.
Mhm.
But then it all changed, I think, at the end of 2020 because there were two deaths that happened that really impacted me. One was one of my close friends, Kimberly Nguyen. She is this Cambodian American writer, just was supposed to be a star, basically. She was working on her novel. Her short stories are very well regarded, and all of that. She passed from COVID in April of that year, and it was devastating for me because I felt like she was showing me what the writing life was like, because she was very disciplined, and a brilliant writer, et cetera, et cetera. And she had people fawning over her writing. So it was a very big loss for me. And then later on, when my dad passed away, we thought that he was attacked because he was found at a bus stop in Coney Island. He had a head fracture, kind of similar, I guess, to the book, where because it was COVID times, there was a lot of miscommunication, I guess, and all the people in the hospital were harried. Just everybody was just frustrated and exhausted. So we weren't sure what happened to him. So I felt like I split mentally at that point, and then I just thought, what if he was attacked? And I think that really changed the trajectory of my book because then I started to examine that and then when I was reworking the novel, because really there was really no theater at that time, so I think I actually tried to get involved with some theater residencies. During those months, nobody would take me in their fellowship for theater. I think if they had taken me, maybe I would have channeled a lot of what I was feeling into like something theatrical, but that didn't happen. And so what I had in front of me that I was working on every day was the book that infused the character of the novel. Like when I went back to it, that infused from beginning to end this sadness, because I was grieving. I feel like a lot of what I was feeling about what happened to my dad went into the book. And of course, later on, I will say that he was not attacked. So I attended a Zoom meeting, and I was talking about what was happening with the Asian Americans being attacked, the elders, etc. And I described that he was found with two black eyes and the head fracture. So one of the people that I had met, I mean not in person but in the Zoom call, another playwright, Julia Cho, she actually said that she would ask her husband, and so she mentioned it to her husband, and she got back to me and said that they're known as raccoon eyes. So I didn't know anything about this, and that usually that happens with a fall. I felt more at peace knowing that, okay, at least he wasn't attacked. Part of me thought, okay, what if in this world, Queenie's world, the protagonist, her father was attacked? Like, how would that be like? And so that it shaped the novel a lot.
Yeah, there's so many layers and interesting parts in this novel. Our friend Kevin, I was like, is there anything I should ask Cherry about? And he was like, ask her about her inclusion of like libraries and CUNY and how you're incorporating all these spaces that are so like important to us,
Right.
and like why it was important to put those all in there.
Right. Oh my gosh. Kevin, thank you for that question. That's actually an excellent question. It was actually important for me to include those spaces because I felt like, especially for a lot of immigrants, these are places that actually they've ended up becoming integrated into society through these spaces, you know? And so, like, I did not go to a CUNY until grad school, so that's not necessarily my experience, but definitely libraries were very important to me, you know? Sort of the unsung heroes, I guess, specifically in New York City. That was important for me to include. I'm currently not teaching in the CUNY system because of my kid. I just had a baby. But when I was teaching, I had so many students who would not have otherwise have gone to college without CUNY, and that really impacted me also, that this is how people get to school. You know, like, this may not be what they thought about what they would do when they would come to the United States, but this is a way how they use as an entry point to American society through school. I also worked for a time at the scholarship office, so there were, you know, in Brooklyn College, and so I saw from a different side, from an administrative side, all of that. With PEN America, I've been a teaching artist with their program that's specifically for undocumented students, and CUNY has been such a huge part of their lives. It's so crazy to think that CUNY, as it is, it's not getting as much funding as it did back in the 70s. And I mean, in the 70s,
it was free.
It was free. Yeah, hello. And now it's the cheapest option, but there's still barriers for some people, you know, and I thought, well, I could just include this as part of the love song, I guess, of New York.
That's beautiful. I know for me, it's like CUNY's part of my life. Libraries are so important. And everyone I talk to, like, they have an issue. I'm like, cool, did you go to your library bound? They're like, what? And I was like, yeah, any like passport issue you have, language stuff, if you can't find any information, someone at the library in New York City will have that, and they'll probably have a pamphlet about it.
Yes, and not only that, they have a network of people. Like, if they don't know, they can call and ask somebody.
If you need your taxes done, some of your friends are like, wait, they will do your taxes at the library? I was like, yes. Like, there's so many resources that are at our fingertips as New Yorkers that I think are so forgotten about or not realize that they exist.
Right. And actually, that was one of the things I did hope for the book, that people would recognize that libraries are an institution there to help the public, you know, and that the public should utilize it more.
Has your book found a way into libraries yet? Have you heard back
Yeah,
from them?
I know that it is definitely in circulation at the Brooklyn Public Library because they ordered 54 copies of
Whoa!
it. So shout out to BPL. Love you guys.
That's so many.
I know.
What was the waiting process like from completing the book till it coming into the world?
It's nerve-wracking, and publishing is such, I mean, okay, for aspiring writers, it's such a brutal world. Also, it's very competitive. And then I think just this year, I don't even have figures, but I know I've joined this debut writer Slack. So it's for debut indies and debut, basically for traditionally published authors. And I think just for us debuts alone, there were probably 500, writers in there.
That's
so
awesome.
that's 500 new books this year for across genres. And so I'm just hoping that the book finds the readers that it needs to, and finds new people for the book to kind of gravitate to, so that it just opens a new world for them. That's my hope. And of course, it's out in the world. It's out of my hands.
Are you planning on writing another novel at some point?
I am working on another novel right now.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah, I'm actually knee deep in it. Like I have 81 pages at this point, so it's because this is what happens when you are waiting, because a lot of the times in the publication process you are waiting a lot, and the waiting actually is very nerve-wracking. So I ended up, as I was waiting, working on something new. First it was an exercise because I was still grieving my dad, so I just had this idea of a ghost dad and his daughter, and the ghost dad goes to kind of this underworld, and the ghost dad is there, and then the daughter kind of follows him. Very different from Love Can't Feed You.
Well, then recently you became a mother. How has motherhood affected how you work and write?
Yeah, it has definitely impacted everything, because I have to be a mom first right now because I'm trying to keep this human alive. And I also went through a severe postpartum depression. Some point, the writing was actually keeping me sane. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was keeping me sane. It kept me at some kind of routine, like some kind of discipline. I felt like I needed that to remember that I wasn't just a boob.
Yeah.
So writing, and then when I can, even though it's more truncated, it's condensed, I only have a few minutes a day, it is keeping me sane.
When do we think this novel is going to eventually see the light of day?
Well, I don't know. I'm hoping that I have a complete draft by next year, but you never know with these things.
Do you think you're ever going to make a return to theater?
I would love to, but then again, right? Oh gosh. You see it, what's happening. It's being decimated slowly. Like everything is closing down.
Yeah, I recall during your book event, especially someone asked about theater, and you were like, theater has become so uninspiring in a way.
I mean, don't you agree though?
Yeah, I think it wasn't until recently that I started seeing lots of theater again.
Yeah.
I feel like there's been so many things opening, but I was like, okay, why is this a knockoff of a movie or something else?
Yeah.
Or anything that really is interesting doesn't get enough reach to find me.
Right. Yeah, and that's something that I think about a lot, what makes a play, because I noticed that's why I was in an experimental theater program, because I was always obsessed with that, what makes a play, and you could only do it on stage and not adapt it to film and vice versa. So I tended to shy away before from having just your typical kitchen sink play that you can mount on Broadway. I mean, no, not knocking that, but that was something I was thinking about. Like, why should I see this in a theater versus a movie theater? Yeah, I mean, I think I still have it in me to do that, but the returns it's so difficult. Just now, I read an article or not even an article, it was a Facebook post, the Wild Project on 4th Street. I don't know if you've ever been to that theater.
I'm not.
A lot of small, indie theater companies mount plays there, and that could be closing, and they want to raise $1 million just so they can buy the building and keep having theater there. So I don't know. That's depressing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the big issue, I think, just citywide with everyone is just space and the existence of space, and if you have access to space.
Yes. And also
theater needs space to exist.
And it's so sad because most people, I feel like people don't value the arts here. In Europe, it's state funded. Here, it's not. There's pros and cons because state-funded theater, I feel like their type of risk is different from the ones that I think indie theater does here best, which is the discovery of amazing things. I don't know. I mean, I was also hoping, right? I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll have a hit book and then the theaters will just say, come on, Cherry, we want you here because you have written a book. Hasn't happened yet, but
Like right now, like so many things are closing. And do you think there's anything like wrong right now with the modern American theater with like what we're making? Or is it just like,
I think it's a combination of things. It's, well, one is you're competing with technology. That's a huge thing. Even television is competing with technology because nobody is as interested in it. There's not much money in it, So if we're not being supported by our state governments, by federal government, it's just who's going to sponsor us? Who's going to reward artists for risks that they're constantly taking, And we still need to eat. We need to survive. We need a place to live so that we can make art, right? So I don't know. It's a complicated mix. And on the other hand, on the TV side, I have a lot of playwright friends who went over to TV land. And they're telling me it's also super hard in television right now. Nobody's working. So there is something happening right now because probably of the proliferation of AI and, again, technology, where people feel like they don't respect the artist. They feel like everybody can be a content creator or that you can program a machine to create content. And I think that's the biggest hurdle right now. Like, how do you make people understand that artistry comes from being human, I also read recently that there's a venture capital publisher. I think they're called The Spine or something like that. So 5 tech bros, or 8, I think it's 4 or 5 tech bros decided that they will have a publishing vanity press or something, and they want to publish 8,000 books a year, and all AI generated. Like, you just feed it an idea, and that is so disgusting. You have people who just do not value artistry. They think everything is just content. It's like they want to make humans and the human experience obsolete. So I don't know. I don't know what to say about that.
Have there been any stories recently that you just like really love, like theater, books, TV, anything that has really captured you lately?
Yeah, right now I'm in a Louis Erdrich. I don't know if I'm saying her name correctly. It's this Ojibwe writer. I just finished this book called The Sentence, and it's just amazing. She talks about, Ojibwe life and the legacy of being American, but also being erased as Indigenous people, so it's interesting, super interesting. And she's also of German descent. So that's interesting to me, just looking at her life as a person.
Then, the final thing I've been asking people lately is, what's been bringing you joy?
Well, the baby's been bringing me joy.
Yay!
There's so much craziness in this world right now. Like, I think about that a lot. Like, what is the future? And I look at my kid and I see, well, this is the future. And because before, I think I looked at the future with a lot of trepidation, a lot of fear, a lot of hopelessness. But then when I had my kid, I just thought, well, hope and joy and all the good stuff. And this is life,
I think that's like the best answer we've had to this question so far. I think that's a great way to wrap it up. So thank you, Cherry, for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you, Jane.
You can find Love Can't Feed You in bookstores, online, at the library. It's published through Dutton Penguin Random House. And where can the people find you if they want to learn more?
So I have a website. It's www.cherrywrites.me. And I'm also on Instagram. My handle is @sai.cherry. And at X, I know it's disappearing fast. Everyone's migrating to Blue Sky, and I do have an account there too. Yeah, you can find me there as well. Like, I like to lurk and see what people are saying in the underworld.
Thanks for listening to The Next Stop Is with Jane August. You can follow me, Jane, at Jane August on Instagram and TikTok. The Next Stop Is recorded at Brick House in downtown Brooklyn. It premieres on Brooklyn Free Speech Radio. You can listen to other episodes in the same place you're listening to this one.